Hello everyone, I've met most of you already, so my name is Adrian Porcescu. I'm a pre-sales consultant for Record This Future and a cybersecurity professional for around 10 years now. And today I'm going to talk about enabling anticipation by enhancing your visibility over the cyber landscape. So it's basically understanding how you can anticipate what's going to happen to your business, what are the capabilities of threats against your business by obtaining more visibility over the landscape and what happens in the landscape. So first of all, I will start with some conceptual ideas, the concept behind the use cases that I will present a bit later on. So we all are here cyber security specialists, right? And our duty is to solve security problems, right? Unfortunately, and I've had this t-shirt, I'll be honest with you, I haven't brought it with me. We usually are told to be solving problems that the company doesn't know about with methods that nobody understands, which I totally disagree, because we should never be acting like this. And solving cybersecurity problems is about defining and achieving objectives on different levels that are related to the business. So it should be on a strategical level, like, for example, I need to identify the threats that might impact or could impact my business. It might be on a tactical level, enforce an aggressive risk-based, vulnerability patching system. And also on operational level, like ensure that the users are not leaking credentials, or if they did, what happened with those and so on. So understanding all of these and understanding that basically we need to solve problems that are related to the business, we transform this into being the cybersecurity specialist that actually solves problems that you as a business knew about because it started from there, right? And with the methods that you should be understanding, we should be able as security specialists to articulate all of these to different departments in the business, right? Because all of the problems are actually their problems. We need to solve the business problems. Okay, so what are the actual usual mix of things that end up helping us solving problems in security? And we all know that it's about a mix of people, processes, and technologies. And you all know the saying that if you think technology will be solving your security problems, you don't know technology, you don't know the security, right? So it's a mix of all of these. We need people, we need technologies, and we need processes to run those technologies properly. We need processes that are matching the business, the way the business runs, right? And all of these, and I think you can all agree with me, start getting enhancements once they get visibility. And for example, a technology, an anti-malware, if you take it, it's more effective if it gets visibility on the system to be able to understand what's happening on the system. And it also gets visibility on the threats. It has more signatures, so it's more powerful, right? It's enhanced. The same with the SIEM. If you're bringing logs from different places and you have visibility, you get to enhance your systems. It's the same for processes. No process will ever be efficient if it doesn't have visibility in the things that it's actually managing as a process, right? And the same with people. Of course, we need visibility to have good decisions. And every day we're making lots of decisions. I think it's like 13,000 decisions that we're making every day. And all of those are enhanced. And I mean decisions like from taking one step, right? And all of these are being enhanced once we get visibility. But what is actually visibility about? And visibility is about getting access to data and information, because that's what brings visibility on our side, right? And all of these three, like people, processes, and technology, have advantages and disadvantages. And the fact that they are working together, that's the reason why they end up being the thing that actually helps us solving problems. Because, for example, technology can be faster than humans, right? But there are some humans that are not replaceable because they know so much about the business that the technology cannot replace them, right? Also, processes. There are a lot of processes and a lot of methodologies that are being developed to solve security problems. But the thing is, there is no one that fits everything. So we need people that understand the business in order to define the proper processes and to choose the right methodologies that are suited for the business. Right? So unless we have a mix of these three, we will never be able to solve efficiently problems. And to enhance all of these, of course, we need to bring data on top of it. But data also have advantages and disadvantages. It is available internally and externally. There is a lot of data, right? Storage is very cheap, so we can store it once we grab it, but it has the disadvantage that it's hard to collect, right? Because it's a lot of it, so it's quite hard to collect. And also, it's hard to organize or to understand, because as I think most of you have worked with the SIEM before, right? You need to interpret those logs, you need to normalize them, you need to bring them at the same level in order for the technology or for the process or for the people to understand that, right? But data has another advantage. The fact that if it's put back through the entire process, that if the data goes back through people, processes, and the technologies, it's being transformed into intelligence. And it's being transformed into insights. And those are actually the ones that end up improving each one of them. So you end up solving problems and solving security problems with an intelligence approach on top of that. And that's actually the reason why we end up being on top of this list and transforming security from just a basic approach, or maybe the compliance security, because we were talking about compliance and just checking the boxes, that doesn't solve problems, okay? All of us tend to be as high as possible on this graphic, right? So maybe we end up being proactive, but the best thing is to be predictive, to understand what are the threats that have the capability of impacting our business, right? And how can we actually put all of these things together? What is actually the potential of a threat to impact my business? And this is a graph that actually defines what is a threat for the business. It's a mix of the capability, the opportunity, and the hostile intent. The thing is that my presentation today will not be focusing on APTs, will not be focusing on nation states, because it's hard to identify the hostile intent, right? It's hard to find when somebody has a hostile intent until you end up looking at the big picture, right? But I will talk about the usual cybercrime, the one that is most prevalent in our landscape, right? Because it's very rare that we end up being attacked by an APT, but it's very often that we get attacks from everybody else, right? So usually the hostile intent is always over there. If you have a business that has some data, that means that once the data gets leaked out, the attacker might be having some advantages, like making money out of it. So all the time, the fact that they can make money on your business, that's always a hostile intent. They want to make money, right? Because that's cybercrime. So we need to focus on those other two. We need to focus on the capabilities that these threats have, and actually the opportunities that these threats have against my business, against my infrastructure, and we will see that. So, first of all, let's talk about capabilities. Which kind of capabilities should I be looking at? Which kind of capabilities should I be getting visibility on? And I might be trying to get capability of a specific relevant actor, because we all know we should start with what already happened to me. So if somebody at some point interacted, attacked me, definitely I should be looking into the current capabilities of that particular threat actor. But the problem is here is that we should actually look at the capability of any threat actor. And to give you an example, imagine just a simple vulnerability, right? An exploit is being published, a vulnerability is being disclosed, and that's a capability that is available to everybody. Any threat actor that wants to make money and already has that capability will be using it. It all gets back to the opportunity. Does he have an opportunity to interact with your business, to attack you, right? So then it goes back to what is an actual opportunity of a threat. An opportunity of a threat is basically whatever defines you. And I wouldn't go up to threat modeling. I don't know how many of you have ever done an exercise of threat modeling, but that's actually measuring the opportunity that a certain threat has against you, okay? Is what is your threat surface? What are the places that an attacker can actually interact with you? What are your assets and what are your technologies? And we were talking over lunch, the fact that there were so many breaches in which exfiltration was done through systems that were not even on the inventory. Not even patched. Not even on the inventory. They didn't know about those systems. It was a computer somewhere forgot in a basement that nobody knew about, nobody was monitoring, right? And that's an opportunity for the attacker. Also, we might be talking about specific partners, right? Maybe specific suppliers, because you have a weak chain in your supply, a weak link in your supply chain that might be used, and that might be an opportunity for an attacker to impact you, okay? And it can go even to operational specifics. Everybody's trying to get banks and trying to exfiltrate money, and all the breaches lately were through SWIFT. The reason why they're managing to attack different banks and to extract money is because all of them have some specific operational aspects using that software, which can be exploitable, right? So everything that goes into this area of opportunity is everything that defines you as a company, as you would be thinking if you're defending yourself, right? I will be caring about the people that I'm interacting with, the way I am, the things that I'm doing every day, and the way I do that, right? So I need to understand that I need to pay attention as a business to everything that might be considered an opportunity for the attacker, right? So once I get visibility and I get data about the attacker's capabilities, and I understand what might be their opportunities against me, then I understand the real potential of that particular threat. And when I understand the potential of that threat, I need to adapt. Because otherwise, while the intent is always over there to make money, I will be having a real threat targeting me. So there is a saying that I love, and it's really directly connected to this adapting stuff. The fact that if the rate of change on the outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside of your company, then the end is near. And this is by Jack Welch, a former GE CEO. So if I'm not able to match the rate of change of the threats that are on the outside, most definitely that will be the end of my business. I need to understand them. I need to understand their capabilities. I need to understand their capabilities against the opportunities that I might be presenting to them, right? So I can adapt. I can adapt my infrastructure. I can adapt the way I'm doing things. Or I can adapt, I don't know, even my controls, right? It's not just about checking boxes and compliance. It's about checking the boxes against the threats that are actually relevant for me, right? So that being, let's say, the conceptual part of my presentation, the fact that visibility allows you to understand better the capabilities and the opportunities and the intent of a certain threat, you might be able to define if that threat is really relevant for you and to anticipate what to do and to adapt. So I will be applying that to 3 use cases, right? And starting with the most simple things, direct mentions related to the threat surface. And the easiest and the most simple thing related to the threat surface are leaked credentials, right? And as you've seen earlier in the presentations, even the highest level APTs, they are running spear phishing, they are running phishing to get some credentials. And why are credentials so important is because they are turning an external threat into an internal one, right? So they are jumping, it's the ladder over the fence, the ladder over the wall, right? And you've heard what happens whenever it's an internal threat. Nobody cares about it, nobody looks at it, and usually monitoring on internal system is not at the highest level as it's on the perimeter, right? So what you're seeing right now is actually distribution of the last 2 months of leaked credentials, documents containing leaked credentials on page sites, underground forums, and dark web and special access. And it's just 2 months. Every dot is another document with leaked credentials, right? So as you can see out there, there are a lot of leaked credentials. So once you get visibility on these things, because they are out there, right? And you get access to this data, you can understand if you're providing an opportunity to somebody because your credentials are in those lists. So you can identify the capabilities that they might be having and the opportunity they might be having. But also this can also enhance your defenses. Because I don't know, I haven't heard about this, and I'm building this on my own. I have a big database of no passwords and hashes that I shouldn't be using, just because I have visibility to that data. If the attackers, and there are a lot of DDoS tools or brute force tools against systems of logins that are actually using these open available credentials. So once in my company I get visibility on that, why not close the opportunity of the attackers that are using that as a capability, right? By making sure that my internal passwords and hashes are not matching those ones that I'm using, right? So once I get visibility in that landscape, I can start influencing and adapting so I can minimize their capabilities and, of course, be able to cover the opportunities that they may be having. And this is just an example of the things related to the threat surface, because it's a login. Other things might be, for example, this one. It's a list of emails with a clear title, mail list for spam by this threat actor. So immediately I understand the intent. If I'm on that list, oh, that threat actor has an intent against me, right? And more than that, because I have the data about the name, I can start investigating about the capabilities. So I can see if against the opportunities that I'm presenting, that's a real threat, right? Also, I need to understand that threat surface means everything that defines me, getting back to the opportunity slide. It can be anything like domains, it can be IPs, it can be systems with operating systems and ports opened. Everything that is a port open in the wild is an opportunity for an attacker to target, right? So out of this first use case is understanding and getting visibility on that is related directly to my threat surface, and understanding their capabilities, I can start adapting and I can start closing the opportunities for the attackers just by looking over data that is related to my threat surface. The second use case is risk-based vulnerability patching program. Would be visibility and having access to data that is available, right? Be enhancing my approach in that? And I would say yes. First of all, this is just a simple timeline of a vulnerability and exploit against a vulnerability. Yeah. So we have the discovery of the vulnerability, which might happen somewhere in the underground, right? And we might be having an exploit of that. I note it as an exploit of technology because there is no CV, there is no definition of the vulnerability in that moment. It's just an exploit against the technology. Also, we have the disclosure time, and then we have the actual exploit of the vulnerability after the disclosure, and of course then scanners being built, malware being built, vulnerability being added to the exploit kits and so on. So it would be wonderful if I would be able to perform some mitigation actions because I have visibility in this point, right? If I know how they're exploiting the technology and I know that I'm using that technology, so it's an opportunity for them, I can start adapting maybe my infrastructure or the way things are communicating so I can close that opportunity. Or of course, if the vulnerability has already been disclosed, I can start by getting visibility to prioritize things, right? Which one is actually being exploited in the wild, so I know which one to patch first, because I can close their capability, right? So the idea is that once I get visibility, and this is actually a timeline of the SMB vulnerability that started Eternal Blue and then WannaCry, okay? So this is what, on the lower part, you're seeing events about the disclosure. On the higher part of the screen, you're seeing events against the technology. And basically this is time zero. This is the moment when the vulnerability was disclosed, right? So everything that happened before that, I don't know how visible it is, but we have SMB 3 Connect 0-day POC. We have the exploit of 0-day vulnerability in the SMB protocol is published. So available data, visibility available, right? Load library of library over SMB, determine OS version via SMB. All of that are capabilities of actors against this technology. If I have this technology, which also is an opportunity, that's a potential threat. So if I understand and I have visibility over this, I can easily start adapting, right? And also the same thing happens on the right side of the timeline, right? Because I have here the vulnerability being disclosed, and I have the moment when the exploit was actually published, which was Eternal Blue. After that, things started getting crazier, right? So if I have the vulnerability and I also have the patching, if I have this visibility, I can start understanding that this is really important and I should be patching that with a priority, because otherwise I might be getting hit, right? So couple of examples of what happens afterwards. People started publishing on GitHub, for example, POCs, everything you see is Python scripts, POCs on how to run Eternal Blue, how to exploit Windows 10, how to exploit Windows 2012, different POCs. So that's a clear capability. And of course, after that, it started fileless ransomware UX, Petya, WannaCry, and a lot of others, ending up with people running services of delivering malware based on that vulnerability. So it's an entire ecosystem, and I think Alan will be talking a bit more about the ecosystem behind that afterwards. But the idea is that once you get visibility as soon as possible on this exploitation timeline, you can understand how to adapt or how to prioritize your patching, right? And the last example that I had was, I'm always getting this question, should I be caring what happens to others if it hadn't happened to me? Is visibility over what happens to others relevant to me? Is it increasing my chances of solving security problems? And the answer is definitely yes. And I'll show you why. So this is an example of a threat actor called the Dark Overlord. I don't know how many of you have heard of it, of him. It's a team, actually. It's supposed to be a team. Initially it was thought it's just one guy, but it seems to be more than one. And the timeline on the top shows things that he published. The timeline above shows things that were published about him and his actions, right? So if we're looking on that, we can see that, mid-2016, this guy was into breaching healthcare companies in US, like very heavily. Breaching them and publishing and selling databases of patients' personal identification information. And more than that, he was also disclosing the way he was doing that. So we have things like from a severely misconfigured network using readily available plain text usernames and passwords. And that's 2 cases, and that's actually 3 cases. And also RDP without any kind of like default credentials like admin. So it's not very high level. Of course, he used some 0 days as well, so he's quite big in the business. But the idea is that sometimes the opportunity that is presented to the threat actor is something that cannot be missed. And it ends up being like that. So he did a lot of things in the healthcare. And of course, if you are a healthcare company, you would care about that because it happened to others. But at some point, after some time, late 2016, this guy started breaching others with probably the same capabilities, just because the intent was the same, making some money, and it was presented with a new opportunity, making more money because there are more money into the finance industry, right? So he started hacking finance industry, and the first one was Westport Capital Bank. And what I want to emphasize here is that this bank had a lot of customers. The problem is that all of those customers were immediately affected. So they needed to adapt. If they wouldn't know about that, and believe me, there are some like background reputation investigations that were held by that bank, and different other very powerful documents that were held by that bank that was breached. Unless you get visibility over this, you don't know how to adapt. Yeah. And further on, this guy started attacking media companies. So if you understand that he's like actually switching depending on the opportunity and the intent is always over there because he wants to make money, you should be knowing about this guy. And it actually happened that, first of all, he hacked Larson Studios, which was a kind of post-production company, which was a partner, I would say, or a supplier for companies like ABC or Netflix. So after some time, because he breached one of their suppliers, let's say, of services, and they didn't adapt it on that, they ended up some month later, like in the mid-2017, being extorted because this guy wanted to leak some things that he stole from the previous breach, right? And you know what happened, they leaked some movies but the idea is that once you get visibility and you get access to data that is available, right, you can understand things that might be happening to you, right? Because you understand the opportunities that you're presenting, and the opportunities sometimes are presented through the partners and through the customers that you have, through the entire supply chain, or even it's just an opportunity that manifested itself somewhere to some other company that was never in your landscape. But the fact that you might be affected by the same thing makes it important for you. So if it happened, it might be happening to you because you have the same opportunity presented against the attack. So that being told, I remember I have another one. This is quite funny. The reason why I put it here is because it's so obvious. So this is both Bank UK. This is early March, let's say middle March, and this is early April, end of March. One bank suffering SMS phishing camps. This was like announced. The campaign was public. People reported it on Twitter. This is like phishing over SMS, right? Not more than 2 weeks afterwards, customers from another bank from UK, one of them actually lost 23K from the same scheme. So if this bank would just have had visibility over this particular event that happened like 2 weeks before that, he could actually started a campaign and they could have adapted in order for that not to be happening to their customers, right? So it is important to get visibility. And just as a conclusion to this, I think that while we have a pyramid of pain, we should also be having a pyramid of interest. And that pyramid of interest should be covering everything from your threat surface, your technologies, your assets, subsidiaries, partners, peers, and you should be interested about what's happening in the global landscape, because you don't know, maybe somebody has a capability against your opportunities that you're presenting that transforms something that is a global threat into a threat that might be impacting you. And for that, of course, you need data, and you need, let's say, relevant data, and you need means in order to get it and to make it understandable. So you need a broad visibility, you need relevance in time because you need to find out about those things as early as possible on the exploitation chain as soon as they happen to others. And of course, we need to understand that we need to have a mix of technologies, humans, and processes with data on top of it in order to make things happen and to be able to solve those security problems that we were talking about at the beginning. So thank you very much. That was all from me. So if you have any questions, I'll be more than pleased to answer. No? If not, thank you very much for your time.